Hi, I'm Jade. I am a producer and an artist living in London, and my practice kind of looks at how the advancement of technology is affecting the way that we form and maintain relationships. That's all I'm going to do for now. Keep it open.
Yeah, nice and short and sweet. My name is Ava Jabbar. I'm an artist and an independent curator. I'm founder of Her Visions, which is a femme-focused digital encounters platform. I support and promote non-binary and female-identifying artists working in new media. I'm specifically interested in the intersection of art, technology and culture. I guess my Her Visions is kind of a curatorial project that kind of expands offline and online experiences. I've done events and exhibitions at the Tate in London, Lux Move and Image, where I had a curatorial residency last year. And I've also done stuff with the BFI, the Brunel Museum, Art Night London, and recently just did an exhibition at Arcade East. And a lot of that is, as I said, working with promoting and supporting female identifying or non-binary artists working with new media. So yeah, that's me. But yeah, I guess we can maybe start the discussion with. Did you have some prompts that you wanted, Abby, or to start with, or?
I was saving my prompts for the wider discussion, so I'm still writing.
Okay. Lovely, great. And did we want to show some examples of some augmented reality?
Yeah, so it's screening through just those face filters at the minute, mixed in with some of the other bits, and then we've got the two other ones on a separate show reel. I'm going to put those on.
I think it would be good to show those, yeah, just to give some context, and then we can kind of we can start to think about.
Did you mean the Teresa ones?
No, this is Martina's and Jacob's, yeah. I guess these kind of are more kind of we were starting to talk about before, because the whole kind of idea of like glamour and face filters. I think for me, I wouldn't say I'm a complete expert on augmented reality. I think mainly with my practice, I'm really about kind of maximizing accessibility, and I think I'm really I think with what I'm sort of exploring through Her Visions and through the platforms and projects that I work on, it's really a product of this accessibility of augmented reality that has gone from using, because as a I guess kind of as a whole kind of experience of augmented reality, we've kind of gone from using these headsets, which is not relatively, has been around for quite a while now, and from going from that to something where we're using our phones, so these kind of like portals of the way that we experience augmented reality has become so much more accessible, because there is essentially, I guess, an extension of our arm, which is our phone. And then this kind of brings up a lot of questions in terms of how do we kind of the ethics of that, and how that kind of sits within our sort of everyday lives, and these kind of like multiple platforms of personas that we're trying to, I guess, keep. And I guess like with this whole kind of explosion of, because I'm really fascinated with social media, and a lot of like what I do with Her Visions is kind of very much about using social media because it democratizes art. You know, it's accessible to everyone, mainly who has a phone, or the internet, which I guess, you know, that's still not a large proportion of the whole world, but in terms of the art world, it's very much more accessible than the sort of niche, like you know, kind of sort of traditional approach to art. I don't know what you sort of think about that.
I was thinking a bit earlier about like the need, like if there's any need actually now for kind of like a physical gallery space, and like what we actually take out of that now that everything's becoming so much more accessible kind of online, and whether we actually have to view anything in real life. And we were chatting earlier about, do we even need to meet people in real life anymore? Like we can, you know, form relationships with people completely online. People can build businesses and build capital through the way they look, through the things that they put out, and especially with things coming in with augmented reality and the way that you can manipulate yourself online. I just don't know how much of a need there is anymore to kind of put yourself out there as like a real person, or as a, not real, but an IRL person, or an IRL gallery, or an IRL institution, or anything like that, and whether we can just kind of live in this kind of like online bubble, or whether there is something that we still take away from like seeing people in the flesh and having like discussions.
Yeah, that's all.
I don't know.
I was just thinking that it doesn't really necessarily matter that people don't see the real you, and I think a lot of people have, I don't know what, you know, that really sort of means, because I mean everything comes down to I think how we sort of, the presentation of sort of oneself, and how we are now kind of existing, as I said, online. I don't know if we do really need, but then I guess this whole kind of idea of like glamour and heightened glamour, or heightened presentation of what you were saying, and we're sort of reverting from that, so we're going into this kind of like trying to be more, everything's kind of reining back in. So how do you kind of, how can you do, if reality is just slightly off, or slightly kind of slightly shifted, and then it's still so familiar, then why would you, how can you differentiate between what's real and what's not, really?
And then does it even matter if you can't anymore?
Yeah.
And we were chatting earlier about this kind of like hunger to have things that aren't, like, for example, like all the Disney films at the moment are being made into kind of like photorealistic kind of versions of what they used to be. So things are looking just slightly off. And we're all kind of doing that on a daily basis as well. Like filters and the way that we edit ourselves now are so close to reality, but they're just slightly off. So it's like, I don't know, there's this kind of like weird tension between whether, like we just kind of like beautify ourselves just a tiny little bit, so then does it even matter if you're doing that? I don't know, is there like a detriment to doing that anymore?
Well, and one of the sort of funny things about that was there's a face filter that just recently came out by this artist, Teresa Folgori, and she created this filter which was inspired, Plastica it's called, and it was inspired by like the botched facial surgery that celebs would have, and I don't know if maybe we could show that actually, that would probably be a good idea. And Amanda Lepore, so you can imagine it's very kind of deformed in terms of like what you would consider natural, and this particular face filter went viral, and she actually had a plastic surgeon, it's coming up, plastic surgeon approach her and wanted them to use it for their practice, because it actually, the filter replicated how this surgeon would, surgeons work essentially, which I find so like bizarre in terms of like this face filter, which this one, So it's this. So you can see it's this very kind of like strange Amanda Lepore kind of superficial kind of idea of beauty. So that I think is just kind of it's kind of like just going on the whole other scale of like, it's so meta. Like it's so meta in that sense that you're just like, it's gone from it's gone from heightened beauty to heightened deformed beauty to I don't know, like complete like natural beauty to what's even kind of like, so it's kind of ping ponging a lot around. But I guess in terms of where that's taken us, in terms of our ethics of what we consider to be I guess truthful to our own identities and the future of our identities when we are living in these like digital spheres, and how digitality I guess is becoming so infused into our sort of realities. Like, I mean, with your work you're kind of like moving between these two worlds, and I think that sort of with AR, it's not, I don't see that sort of pulling back in a way, like it's just going to become more and more immersed. I
think with, especially with my work at the moment, because I'm making kind of a lot of AR pieces. I don't know if you guys have ever used the software called Weird Type, where you can put, you can write something out, like a statement or a note to somebody, and you can kind of pull it out into the real world and kind of walk around it and do all this kind of stuff. I think it's quite interesting in that because we've all got like accessibility to this kind of technology now. We can produce art, or we can produce a piece which is purely for, self kind of, I don't know, produce a post or a social media kind of, story to promote ourselves. It's just become so easy now and so readily available. And I'm just thinking about how that's kind of changing the art world, especially because over the past kind of year, I've made art with free AR software, which is quite effective, which people still kind of feel like magic about. And I'm just thinking about
which
how
one is that? The Spur or no V4?
What the software?
Yeah.
It's called Weird Type. But it's I'm just thinking about how people can produce art so easily now using AR software, and how I'm thinking it's probably like quite a positive thing, because you can make quite fantastical art which people haven't really seen yet with such ease, and people think there's kind of like a skill behind it as well, which I find is really interesting, how you can kind of like make work which seems kind of like highly crafted, which has no kind of like craft at all, because somebody's actually programmed the program for you.
But what's and I guess with on those sort of along those lines, so just to sort of backtrack with the reason why the face filters I think have become so accessible is because Facebook made a program, and also Snapchat have software which is free software which you can build these face filters in. So this information and these programs are owned by Facebook and Snapchat. So they've created these like fun ways of creating art, but then it's they actually have all of your details, and this is where facial recognition, facial tracking, all of this data that they now have, because people are using these face filters, which seems kind of on the surface kind of harmless and fun, and it's then now through, and it's so menacing because it becomes so viral, and it reaches so many people that the amount of data that they can collect from one successful face filter is kind of crazy. And
I think it's pretty amazing as well how people are kind of this kind of big brother concept, people still kind of fear that. And we were talking earlier about loads of these companies collecting our data, like a Netflix documentary just came out called The Big Hack, and how Cambridge Analytica kind of like stole all of our information, and how Facebook and WhatsApp, people are like ploughing through our data on a daily basis, ploughing through our kind of phone calls, and it's so readily available. And in King's Cross recently, they've just installed cameras. Every single person who walks into King's Cross now has their face kind of recognised, and your data is uploaded into a system. And we're kind of freaked out about that still, but we're not freaked out about Snapchat or Instagram or putting our faces on that on kind of like a daily. And like you said, it's not just for our followers. Like, these companies are actually collecting our data through using these fun filters, and that is menacing and something that we just don't think about.
But also a lot of the, you know, a lot of the kind of systems that have been in place in terms of like facial recognition and face tracking are, you know, predominantly made by white men. So they're like data sets that don't even recognise people of colour or women of colour. Like, a black woman would not their face would not be recognised on these, like a lot of these like facial recognition systems and data sets. And it's, I guess it's coming down to also like where the origins of like all of this data coming from. So that's kind of scary as well, or how that data's being organised perhaps is really scary as well. So there's I think I feel quite torn between the accessibility of AR now, in terms of how in terms of what the way that the means that it gives for artists to create something against, you know, or versus this whole kind of
like, should we actually be using it? It's pretty
because it's
scary.
but also it's like, you know, at the same time, if you are someone that you are on the margins and you have, you know, you do have the opportunity to make something creative using these products that are, you know, I think like you have to kind of embrace that as well, and think about how that's going to, like, working with the systems rather than just completely ignoring them. I don't think that's necessarily the way forward, really.
And I think it is a good opportunity because obviously a lot of people, if not most people, aren't trained to code, aren't trained to do kind of 3D animation, etc., etc., etc. And this is just opening up kind of it's opening up a kind of world where people can be more creative. But I suppose it's that thing as well of like, if you have an Instagram and if you post something, are you an artist? It kind of opens up that kind of world. Or if you, I don't know, like where is that line now? If everybody can create exactly the same kind of stuff, like where do you sit if you are like an artist from, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago when it didn't exist?
Yeah, but I
and then does it even matter if more people are making work? Probably
but also
not.
It's like what constitutes art.
Yeah.
I think, because for me it's about, you know, for me, I don't know, there's always this kind of language appropriation or the way that language is associated to like the typical formats of arts and artists institutes, and so that's why I was really fascinated by all of the art that I was experiencing online and through like sort of digital culture, which felt to me like a real sort of democratization of that kind of creativity and what is considered art, and I feel like this kind of augmented reality is an extension of that, and you know, it's opening up a new discussion about, you know, how we experience art as well, because it's coming from, you know, not just like it's not just something, it's something that's so integrated now that in our everyday, from the moment you wake up to, you know, going to sleep, you can be experiencing art, which I think is kind of amazing, but as well, like, you know, in a way, like, you know, you can be inspired
but then do you think
constantly, but also kind of it's in a way maybe detrimental because it's
because you're seeing so much all the time.
You're sort
does it kind of water down kind of viewing? I mean,
in
a traditional
sense, water
sense.
down is the wrong word.
Yeah, I think
like,
it is too. I think it is too. But because we're bombarded by so much, I mean, there's so much to take in, isn't there? So what do you kind of let rise to the top, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, but then I guess that's why I think it's, I mean, I'm really focused on, you know, as I said, marginalised groups of people and looking specifically at what they're creating within these sectors or these fields. And I think it's kind of opening up that sort of topic and a conversation for me is supporting and promoting people that otherwise wouldn't have opportunities to be supported. And I think because that's now, it's that diversity, I think, in art that's really sort of necessary. And I think this, augmented reality is really a big part of that diversity, I think. And I think it's like it's just an interesting one to watch, I guess. I don't know, it'd be nice to maybe see if anyone had any thoughts to add. Would like to start maybe on we
start
can,
a conversation.
Because
we're just going to keep going.
We can keep rambling if you want. Was there any?
Well, I was thinking through earlier in terms of kind of thinking about the history and thinking back to kind of previous versions of this, I suppose, not as much technologically advanced as it is now. Like in fairy tales and fantasies, there's always characters that kind of either disguise themselves, or like in Snow White, is it with the mirror, and that kind of changes and that apparition and things like that. Do you see it as like a possible just extension to this? Now we've got this technology and you can kind of change how you look.
I mean, I think there's always been a humanly desire to go beyond what is reality, I suppose, in any sense. I mean, even looking at kind of surrealism or art throughout kind of all ages. I don't know. I think it's great for humans to push themselves outside of their kind of comfort and outside of what exists now. I don't know if that's really an answer, but maybe. I mean, it's just a natural progression, isn't it? It went from that kind of cheesy kind of apparition, holographic kind of state, and now it's in a way that is kind of way more polished and way more accessible. So I don't think it's anything new that we're kind of we're kind of wanting to have this that we're familiar with this idea of illusion. I don't think that's anything new. I think that's just something the way that our kind of brain works is a projection that's not necessarily there really. And I think how we kind of perceive the world, if we're going to be philosophical about it. So that kind of I think that familiarity with the concept is inherent in us anyway. But it's I think now that there's actually this kind of physical kind of very obvious kind of layer to how we're experiencing the world, and that is I mean, I find it really fascinating, and I feel how do we, I guess what I really try and want to get to explore more through my sort of research and practice is how can we kind of expand that to really understand, or I guess getting back to being more empathetic, or how can we be more intuitive or more insightful or kind of interested in other people, the world around us. I think how can we sort of use that to expand our knowledge in that sense, and I think that's kind of more where I'd like to kind of think about how that can be used. I guess that kind of where we've come from in that sort of idea of illusion and the mirage and projection. I think it's interesting how now kind of that every man or that every woman can kind of take their kind of fantasy or their kind of not fantasies necessarily, but no longer do they have to just exist in your mind or exist in books or exist in film. That every single person can take that out and kind of put it onto a stage now. I find that quite interesting, and also kind of maybe a little bit scary as well, that everybody's just kind of putting everything out there all the time.
So any other?
When the the sculptures are being designed like specifically. From I don't know like loads about how it all works, but it seems that so you can like take a photo now in the room and the sculpture will be there and you can move around it. When you're designing things, are you thinking about like do you have a specific set like location in mind where it would be ideal to, or is it, you know, are you thinking about it in terms of this will be like multi-location and you know this has to work everywhere, or is there like, you know, do you issue like guidelines for that on where it would like work the best? Or?
I'm going to direct that to Jane because she's done one of the commissions. So.
Yeah, so I did one of the works which you may have seen up here. It's basically it's like a grey floating ball with the words going around it and then it drops. Yeah. And basically that was designed to be shown in Yorkshire Sculpture Park. So usually my work is kind of like highly like traditional femme, if you like, so very kind of like pink and etc. But this one was designed especially to kind of look like a sculpture made of stone, this one here, but still have this kind of like fluidity about it, and then still have kind of its like poetic kind of text piece running around it. So this one was designed to be shown in Yorkshire Sculpture Park, but obviously I wanted it to work anywhere, and it can work anywhere if you download it onto your Snapchat, if you have Snapchat. But obviously you can open it up, and I do have some, I was laughing earlier, we were looking at some of the documentation that people were doing, and I was laughing because it would just kind of appear in Shoreditch, and I found that really funny. Like one of my friends was just walking down the street and then it was just there, and then it's like in the sky, and then there's one of like my boyfriend just chilling and it's just chilling next to him in like our flat, and it's just like, I find that really kind of amusing how you can make something which has I don't know, like there's a seriousness about it and there's kind of like a polishedness about it, but at the same time it's quite humorous, that it just kind of can like pop up anywhere and then disappear anywhere too. I kind of like that that it's just gone after a little bit. But yeah, but I suppose in terms of like actually making it, I made it in 3D, obviously, like Cinema 4D and in After Effects, and then made it in Lens Studio, which anybody can kind of download and have a play on, and you can kind of make facial recognition filters as well to be used anywhere. And I think that's kind of the beauty of AR now, is that you don't have to be in a certain place to view it, and you know, I didn't have to be in Yorkshire Sculpture Park to make that work, and people didn't have to be there to view it. I kind of like that idea that it can kind of just live anywhere, but then also taking it out of the traditional sense of like an art context as well. And like people, you know, a lot of people aren't privileged enough, or I mean I say privileged in kind of a not everybody has access to go to these galleries, and not everybody like fucking wants to at the end of the day. Like not everybody wants to buy into that and like pay to go to an institution and view art. So I think it's quite nice that we kind of get to do that on the fly now.
Yeah, I'm also, I guess, like fascinated about this, the sort of like the front and back camera of how like we're experiencing like augmented reality, from, you know, like selfies to then what we kind of like project into the world, and this whole idea of like space and what does that mean for like our own personal space, and then also like how does that translate onto, you know, I guess like how we kind of experience those things. I don't know if anyone's got any sort of thoughts about that really, or just that kind of idea of this, I guess, kind of like sort of referential, kind of heightened referential spaces.
I was just going to kind of just think back about one of the points you were talking about earlier, and the kind of the access and the kind of the free software, so people having access to this free software. Obviously we're like in the Henry Moore Institute, which is kind of an institute dedicated to the study of sculpture, so it's all very kind of material, but working with artists through the festival that's going on now, there's a real big issue on kind of access to spaces and access to materials, and the cost of materials, the rising cost of materials in studio spaces, whereas there seems to be kind of almost the opposite of that. I don't know if it gives people who want to be creative a way of doing that that doesn't require all this space and materials and all those kind of associated costs potentially?
I think it does to a certain extent. Obviously, like I was saying, I think it's really great that you can kind of view art on the fly now, and maybe for exhibiting artists that you don't have to kind of, you know, rent a space, etc., etc. But at the same time, there is still a cost associated if you are going to do something with technology, because there's still like labour, that learning a software, buying a software, like there's still kind of, you know, like Cinema 4D, for instance, isn't a cheap piece of software, and neither is Creative Cloud. And as much as we can kind of manoeuvre our way around that kind of thing and probably you know, get hacked file and all of that kind of stuff, there's still a cost involved, I think. And I think we maybe shouldn't kind of think that this is the free way of making work, because there's still labour involved, and artists still should be kind of, not just artists but creatives on a whole, should be paid for what they are making, even if it's made with free or kind of, yeah, do you know what I mean?
And then the amount of electricity now that is being used to support all of these you know, data farms, or, you know, this kind of thing is kind of that's a whole other sort of can of worms, I think, in terms of this sort of, I guess, like this illusion or imagined idea of being resourceful, but it's you know, you're paying for it in different ways, I guess.
And I think it's been kind of,
but then the younger generations, I guess, don't, you know, maybe the millennials see it sort of as a free form of making art.
But I still think that, I mean, it's been like a long-standing discussion that with like video or digital works, that like there is still a price on them, and I think a lot of kind of digital artists still don't get paid or still don't get recognised for like the making of their work. And I think that's something that may even go, you know, even more to the kind of wrong way, in that, like I said, this feels like a free work. Do you know what I mean? This feels like a free way to produce work, but it's actually not, because there isn't a physical sculpture and you can't purchase it or own it, I suppose. I think it could get problematic in terms of paying artists, or kind of respecting the craft of making something like this.
Yeah, and I think that's also the whole arena of fees as well. Like, how do you start to like cost these then?
Exactly.
How do artists get paid? And I think that's and I come from like a digital, like moving image background, so the whole sort of like digital revolution, going from film to digital to now we're sort of using technology to create art, is, you know, it's kind of, I think it's really hard for people to get properly covered for their time, because it's the like you said, this the materiality of what you're making is really hard to kind of I think kind of understand or ascertain whether the value of that, I think. So it's one to it's hard to, it's an undulating kind of scale, I think.
Yeah.
I often think there's like a time span to like technology, like things come in and out a lot of the time, and sometimes I think about with using this of how making sure you document what you have, and like he was like, do you have that if it's accessible in the future? I don't know, what are your thoughts about that?
I think archive, this whole kind of like digital archiving thing is something that's is really, I think, prevalent for a lot of new media artists and people working in the sphere, because it's like how do you actually, it is time based, how can you actually kind of retain that work in the same way that you would like of an actual sort of material piece. So I think there's a lot of exploration and discussion about that, And I mean, well, now you've got, you know, actual, like real, like museums actually dedicating, you know, specific archival kind of constructs to be able to keep these, I guess, files to access in the future at some point. Like, and I think there's various technologies of how, you know, you can sort of, how that can be, or formats of how that can be approached, but essentially it's like, yeah, it's just data, isn't it? And how's that sort of, I don't know what your thoughts are.
I was just thinking then about the fact that these kind of pieces are data and they aren't material. So the way that we archive them is probably even more effective than a material piece, or because it will last in the state that it was made forever. It will never change or differ, but only in terms of it will age with the technology, I suppose, and the value of it will fall.
Similar way of like something becoming aged or sort of rotten, or but it's like really rotten funny in the future because it's dated, because the technology is older or something. It's kind of a very strange.
It will get really kind of like old and naff for a while, and then it will come back and be like retro, really cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's really odd.
That's a really interesting. Yeah, it's a really interesting thought actually. Because I mean, even if you looking back to like like video works or like 3D made even sort of 3 years ago, it looks dated. So. Yeah, I think that kind of process of archiving and I mean, but it's a reminder that it, like you said, time based as well. These are time based works.
So like, there seems to be this weird feedback loop where, so you know with the plastic surgery thing where they're asking about the app, so you've got so like kind of like it goes around this weird thing where you have the reality of someone wants to look like, you know, like this augmented version of themselves because they're using the app, but then the app has been created to make people look like the real life augmented version of themselves. So, which seems to me like everything is, but then is like everything, do you think it will push things in a more extreme direction with art where you get, because then presumably like the logical conclusion that is someone wants to, you know, they, if that becomes a norm, they're gonna like the sort of facial enhancements that they have might be pushed in a more kind of like, oh well, we want to take it in a direction where like the kind of augmented art has gone where it's more like kind of hyper real. Do you think that might push like art as a whole in terms of like a more extreme direction where you've got like due to this like loop of like trying to imitate life, but then life has become sort of more bizarre because of trying to copy an augmented reality?
That's a really funny question. Like, it's just funny.
It sounded alright in my head.
No,
said it.
It's not a funny question. It's funny to imagine stuff like that, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're all going to be walking around with like faces that are like all blown out. But I think I don't know whether it will make reality. I mean, reality as like what is reality now? Like, reality is walking around on our phones and looking through our kind of the lens, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I was kind of saying that. Yeah. I think the extreme version of it is, the extreme version of AR to me is the fact that so many things are looking natural now and they're not natural. They're so not achievable, they're so not realistic, but because they're so close to it, they look like it. Like, you know, celebrities who are kind of like, or Instagram kind of, what are they called, influencers, they've like developed this world online. Like, there was this girl the other day who, she was being scrutinised because she had the same clouds in every single photo that she had, which meant like she was posing on like a beach and the same clouds were behind her. And then she was like doing an ad like in a hotel and the same clouds were outside of the window. So she's obviously just like photoshopped the clouds every single time. And I was just thinking about how people are building like such massive companies and capital and endorsements, and people are so believing in this shit that it's like, that's the extreme to me, that it's so real and people want that, and people want like even like the slightest kind of like, we cannot achieve the way that a Snapchat filter makes us look.
But I mean, that kind of, I guess that's the whole kind of classic thing of like that Photoshop look,
Yeah.
you know, that we've sort of been accustomed to, and like these real kind of unrealistic like standards of beauty, which in a way, so I really like embracing the more like extreme realizations or like I guess like approaches to this augmented reality, because I mean it's so far-fetched that, you know, it's just like it's almost like you get it, that makes you feel more comfortable, you know, because you know like there's
less scary.
there's a safety there that you know that this is like it's not reality. So sorry.
What do you think about Hollywood getting involved in normalising things like this? And the reason I bring this up is because I remember when I was younger, quite a long time ago, and I was asking, you know, we're all asking guys, what do you think about, do you prefer real breasts, do you prefer fake ones? Because this was becoming a thing that celebrities were doing, with like to augment themselves, obviously. And the answer was always real. As celebrities have kind of normalised that and made that the normal thing, and more normal people, it's now it's more affordable as well, so obviously more and more normal people are doing it. I think that answer's changing or will change. Yeah. And I'm noticing, it's quite sinister, but I'm noticing in films, all the older celebrities just, they don't need to, I don't know, they don't look old anymore. They don't look, none of them, Nicole Kidman, none of them. And I was watching Samuel L. Jackson in a recent highbrow film, and just looked amazing. And I thought, how are you supposed to age in the real world when that's what you're seeing, and that's going to become really influential in normalising it? Obviously,
Totally.
you know, Hollywood has a massive part to play in that. So.
And it's really weird because it's not actually just a photoshopped image in a magazine anymore, is it? It's moving, it's real. Like, and that, like I was saying, that's what really kind of scares me, and that to me is the most extreme thing, because there is just no way that you're ever going to achieve that. Like, real people are never going to achieve that. But then on the flip side, like, do we have to achieve it if we're only being seen online?
But it's also moved into, again, that's that idea of like, you know, your sort of personal space of like, you're not just going to the cinema, or you're not just like, you know, like signing up to a situation where you know that like there's this kind of distortion of reality. It's just like stuff that's on your phone, or it's like, you know, that's just like it's there, it's really present in your everyday, and because we're all living through this kind of extension of us, you know, like of our reality through, you know, just so accessible. And I think there's no filter on that in a way, like how that imposes on your sort of perception of things. And that's probably,
I suppose off the back of that, when you go and see a film, like you were saying, you're signing up to see something that isn't real, I suppose. So maybe it doesn't matter too much that they don't look old in their film, but then it does matter if they're doing like an ad, or they're just talking like on their Instagram story and they look exactly the same. And actually, even on your Instagram stories now, you can manipulate the way that you look, so you always look like that It's a really strange thing, but I do think it 100% has fed into like our real lives now, hasn't it? And it, you know, continues to influence the way that we want to look. And
also, you don't even know now if the person that you're seeing talking is really the person that is talking, because
the deep fakes,
which is like a whole other, you know, that's kind of
Have you guys seen deep fakes?
Yeah, are you familiar with?
There's a Tom Cruise one with what's he called? The impressionist guy, where it moves between the two faces.
And there's one of Barack Obama as well.
Yeah,
basically, it's just
one is scary.
It's really scary.
Yeah.
There's so many videos, but have a look at deep fakes. But basically, you can make somebody. Well, you can just augment any person to look like somebody else and make them say anything. So there's one of like Barack Obama just giving a speech, and he's saying all of these like absolutely ridiculous things, and you would believe it's him because it sounds like him and looks like him, and it looks so real, but then it's just not him.
It's just really worrying.
Yeah, so then it's like, is anything that we're seeing, because obviously, I mean, it's not too dangerous if we're doing it and we've got a filter on and we're saying like pretty wacky things, but then when it comes to like world leaders and people that we're actually putting our trust in every single day, with things like deep fakes, like, man, we're just going to get absolutely crushed by it, because there's just no way of kind of differentiating between like real and fantasy.
I mean, yeah, that's, I guess that, you know, that is the sort of the thin line that we're sort of treading on when we're sort of moving between these altered states, is it's a kind of it's a bit
It's made me
worrying.
feel anxious now.
It's a bit worrying.
I'm like,
The world is terrible.
I was just going to kind of just follow on from that. I was just thinking while you were talking about how we're kind of, in theory, talking specifically about augmented reality. Do you think that potentially we find that maybe more easy to access, easy to accept, but also a bit more anxiety kind of creating, because it's embedded in reality, you know, it's still got that element of reality, where it seems like virtual reality, it can be completely
Constructed,
yeah, exactly. But whereas with augmented reality, it still is the, you know, we project that onto the world that we're in, potentially. I don't know, just like that.
I mean, I'm not sure really how to answer that specifically, but I mean, in terms of like being anxious about this kind of stuff, like I think when you highlight it, there is like an anxiety that maybe everything you're looking at isn't real, but then because we're in it every day, we've just got to kind of accept it and not be scared all the time. Like we've just got to kind of take it with a pinch of salt, maybe. I don't know if that answers it at all, but it's like it's really like depressing to be worried all the time, right? And be like, is anything that I'm seeing, like, is anything that I'm viewing real? And we've got to put our faith in to a certain extent. I don't know.
For me, I mean, I would say it's not anxiety inducing, because I just love anything surreal. But I can see how it could be, though.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. Again, it's that thing of like, you sort of know, you know what you're signing up for in a way. Like if you're going like having a VR experience or something. But I mean, that, I don't know, I find that kind of more anxiety inducing, that's kind of being very immersed. I feel like it's almost safer being in a little bit
half in, half out.
half out. Exactly. Yeah. Maybe I'd feel a bit more comfortable with that situation, I feel.
Yeah.
How many others?
Does anybody else have any other questions? Or just thoughts? It doesn't have to be a fully formed question.
I've noticed like with technology and like this, the technology kind of gets removed, it's becoming less and less. And I don't really know what's next really. Like we're having it on our phones, but soon it might not be our phones, if you know what I mean. I feel like we're wanting less and less interface with like the headset. Like how many of us actually have them in our homes? Because it's something that's on your head, not your head. But with like a phone you carry, it's a lot easier and more accessible. I don't know. I think people just want less interface sometimes, I think.
Yeah, I think everything's becoming so much more integrated in terms of like, and more biological. So it's going to be moving into like, you know, picking up electromagnetic waves that we're like emitting, and you know how that's going to respond to our environment, how that's going to create like alternative situations for us. I think that, you know, like that's kind of scary, but it's kind of starting to happen already, like and then this is just a precursor really, I think, to that. But I guess it's just it's a good it's a good time to really kind of like, I think, trying to get some sort of grasp of critical angle on like how this is really affecting us, and I don't know.
No, I agree. I think it's good to kind of, to understand it as much as we can, and still realise that we can still kind of break away from those interfaces. We can still put it down.
Yeah.
We can still sit here and have a
So
discussion
we're
and
still
not
that
be.
at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, we
like
still
we
have a
can,
breakaway.
Yeah.
And as much as, you know, we all try and do our kind of like social media purges, or our kind of like put our phones down and leave them alone for a bit, and I think that's good that we can still make a decision to do that at this point, because maybe we'll be like Black Mirrored soon, where we're like, no,
We're just completely
heads,
wired in.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But would you choose that?
Oh my god, no.
Because I think I've been led to choose the Matrix, basically.
Yeah.
And I think so many people already would willingly choose that.
Yeah.
And at that point, you just think, well, what's the point then? Because you can do anything then in that case, can't you?
What if you completely like leveled up into
Yeah, you could go flying.
like the virtual?
You could fly, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't choose that? But it's not real. It's like when you come home from work, or when some people come home from work and they've just been working 8, 10, 12 hours, whatever it is, and you've been doing that for someone else, so you've not got,
Yeah.
that's not your life at that point. Not really, that's kind of like someone else dictating your life at that point. And some people come home and just sit and watch TV, which is another form of not reality, obviously, and they're watching someone else live their life. And one day I was doing this for a couple of hours, and I sort of looked away for a second, and I sort of, you know when you do the mindful stuff, and I stepped outside it for a second, I looked at myself, I looked at my partner, and I just thought, what am I doing? I've literally just sat here like a zombie, this is what I'm doing right now. Watching TV is not doing anything. You can't say, what did you do last night? I watched TV, so you may as well have said nothing. Because that wasn't a thing that you did. You just watched someone else pretend to do it.
I suppose it's like, I mean, watching TV and immersing yourself that way, it's just another interface, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yes.
And it's just, as much as you like putting your phone down and cutting off social media, you're still kind of in that state of mind where you're just going to give yourself up to that thing.
So, question. If that's how people feel, I know I feel like that. If you create art digitally, is that real?
Is the making of digital? Well, yeah, it's real because there's still a labour, isn't there? And there's still a skill that you're making. It might not physically exist, but it exists in some way.
Okay.
So I think that it is real. I mean, it define what real is, I suppose, which is really strange. But I was just thinking about something that Ricky Gervais said the other day, which is like really cheesy. But I was watching him on Hot Ones, and he was just saying like he doesn't need anything except reality, because reality is like enough. And I think we forget often, because we've got so much of this kind of like technological, kind of like fantastical stuff going on around us, or on our phones, or on our interfaces, that we do forget how kind of like amazing like reality actually is, as cheesy as it like sounds. And like we're all getting super like riled about kind of like the Amazon and our like beautiful planet and all of this kind of stuff at the moment, but we're actually not stepping away to kind of like take like notice of that and like do our mindfulness and all of that kind of stuff. So I think reality is enough. We're just getting bombarded to believe that it's not right now. I don't know, but yeah, that's a bit of a tangent.
It's a really good point. When we're talking about augmented reality, you're like, what about reality?
What about reality though? We've got this whole thing going on.
That's very true, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah.
Here. To that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Maybe a good place to end on reality.
Yeah.
Let's go away and enjoy reality.
Yeah.
Don't call me phone.
Yeah, put my phone
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
Thanks everyone
Thank
for
you.
coming, chatting.
Yeah.